It is 3 o'clock, so I would like to call to order this meeting of the Monroe County Stormwater Management Board on March 10th, 2021. And our first order of business is approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes from February 10th, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Kelsey, would you please call the roll?
Githens,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
All right, the motion carried. And we'll move on to old business, which is the Lake Monroe Water Fund and a request for $1,000 for a service agreement. And Kelsey, are you presenting this?
I can pull up the information in the packet. Could I have permission to share my screen, please?
You do now?
Thank you. So I'll give a brief overview of what we discussed last time. We did spend quite a bit of time on this at the last meeting. So 12 minutes, I'll go through the MOU, the request, and then allow Jane, who is here with us, to offer any other comments on this. So this is a request for $1,000 from our stormwater funds to pay for what we decided was an education and outreach campaign. They initially were requesting startup funds for the Lake Monroe Water Fund. At our last meeting, we decided that the money would be better spent, and it seemed to align with what they were trying to do, to instead use it specifically for education and outreach. I put together a short memorandum of understanding between the two groups. If you choose to award this money. So I required in the MOU a education outreach plan so that they outline exactly what they will be using the funds for, to make sure it aligns with our stormwater programs, priorities. We already have our stormwater quality management plan for the MS4 program that has an education outreach component. So we'd like to see what they plan to use the funding for, to make sure it is an appropriate use of our stormwater funds. So I did receive a signed copy of this already from Jane, representing the Lake Monroe Water Fund. If you had a chance to read through it, it's fairly short, but it would basically just require them to submit a plan for the money, and they will have until the end of this year to use the funds. We can obviously change any part of this if you feel they need to change it, but this would be my best place to start, I guess. So.
Thank you. Is Miss Martin still here? I'm not seeing her.
I am here.
Okay, great. Do you have anything to add?
Just that the MOU is very straightforward, easy for us to sign and adhere to education and outreach. We are currently working on that plan, and it's multifaceted, partnering strategies and media strategies. And I understand and think it's completely reasonable to require us to submit that plan to you before any money is awarded. So we're completely in agreement there, and appreciate the work that Kelsey has done and the time you've given us on this board.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas, you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I'm assuming that the MS4 operator is going to review the plan. It does it need to come back to us? I'm hoping that we can just, we could just get a report after, but what's the plan for that?
I would be happy to make it conditional to her favorable recommendation. So if there's a need for it to come back, that she could identify it and bring it back, if that's comfortable with you, Kelsey.
Yeah, I have in the MOU this line here that the plan will be submitted to the Stormwater Board for approval. I can change that to say they can submit it to the MS4 coordinator for approval. And then I can report back to the board after that to give you an update on the plan and any implementation that's happened.
That sounds like a good idea. Does that work out for you, Commissioner Thomas? Okay, are there any other questions?
I have one.
Commissioner Githens?
Yes, the last meeting, and it was helpful to be refreshed by the notes from the minutes, or in the minutes from last meeting, that part of the educational outreach was going to be educating members who get their water through City of Bloomington utilities, education of why they were trying to raise funds. So is education here about raising funds, or what exactly is education going to cover, I guess?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Yes. We have gotten conditional approval from the City of Bloomington Utilities to include an insert on why a water fund is important, what is a water fund, driving people to our website and providing boxes and essentially making the case. So that will be part of the education program. That will start May 1st. Vic Kelson has asked us to delay it a month. So the month of April, our website will go live. We will begin a partnering strategy with corporate customers and institutions and a media campaign. And this will be ongoing really for the remainder of this year and as needed next year to get folks to round up and to donate. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, yes and no. To me, that part of that is a lot of fundraising.
Well, we're establishing a water fund and it requires funding so we can put it into projects. So we're trying to educate water customers that water is essential for our economy, for recreation, for conservation, and much of the background information on both the reason for a water fund and why now is critical to begin it before we have any kind of a crisis, and to accommodate both climate change and the inevitable growth that we want in our economy and our population. So, you know, I think we're trying to educate people on water and the importance of creating a funding vehicle to meet the increasing challenges of our water source.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Githens?
Sorry, I keep muting. That's a very reasonable response. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I have a question. Are you in some way going to reach out to all the people who get water from Lake Monroe but do not receive a utilities bill from Bloomington?
Well, we have partnered with Friends of Lake Monroe, with Jackson County and Roseacre Farms, represented by Joe Miller on our board. We have a board member from Monroe County, pardon me, from Brown County. We've received funding from the Brown County Foundation. So yes, it is definitely our plan to reach upstream and both fundraise, but more importantly, educate folks upstream as to the importance of a systems-based approach for both those areas that don't get water from us, but are affecting our water quality.
Thank you. I also was wondering, I'm among the apparently handful of people in this county who still has a well. And so I don't receive City of Bloomington water at all, but I'm very concerned about Lake Monroe and that its overall state of health and that it continues that way. Would it be possible for me to just make direct donations if I were to choose to?
Yes, we're planning a donate button on our website, which we will drive people to through a social media campaign as well as a partnering campaign. Obviously, for the big corporate customers, that's part of our partnering strategy, because instead of Cook rounding up, we'd like them to make a recurring donation. So yes, we're working with PayPal and Give Lively and then social media to allow people to donate.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, Commissioner Jones raised a great point, and it's the question related to what I had, which is how this is going to be shared, publicized with the many people in Monroe County and other counties nearby who are sort of wholesale customer recipients of Bloomington water. So people who are getting their water from Washington Township, for example, or B&B or others. How are they going to know anything about this? Is this really just a City of Bloomington campaign, or can it really become something bigger?
We're hoping that it can be something bigger. As you know, City of Bloomington Utilities right now, Vic, Holly, their financial person, Laura, are all just drowning in work to get their rate increase through the many levels of approval and meetings with stakeholders, et cetera. So all of those people, their financial person, their communication person, and Vic are very keen to give us warm introductions to their 11 wholesale customers. And then I will begin to educate them and see whether I can get them to put our insert and boxes in their bills. But all of this is going to take time, which is why I said all of our board members are geared up, waiting for materials to begin to help in both the education and the awareness that's necessary, including, as you point out, with the wholesale customers.
Okay, because I know a couple of the wholesalers do use postcards for bills instead of letters, so inserts won't work. So I just have some concerns about that. I don't want this to, if this is just a City of Bloomington thing, then let the City of Bloomington pay for it. But clearly we all benefit and utilize the water at Lake Monroe, and I'd rather this be a broader approach. So thank you.
I just wanted to add on that too. I kind of feel the exact same way. And even with Commissioner Githin's comments, I'd be very curious what she would like to see added into this. It seems like it was a fair response, but there might be something that we could really make this more focused broadly across the county. I think this might be a good first initial way to get ourselves positioned to extend these conversations so we can maybe meet some of what we're just discussing of like other users that aren't using the Bloomington city utility as their one water source. It's very interesting. I still feel like this is a good first step, but I hope what we're saying is very reflective on maybe what we can accomplish in the future. And if you, I guess, Kelsey, if you feel like there's any way that we could maybe cast a larger net, I'd love some feedback on that too, because I do think this is a good program. It's just how can we get more people across the county involved and educated about this? So.
Is this something that once these materials are available, would Connie be able to help with this kind of education program?
Is that for me?
No, actually, I think I'm asking Ms. Satonia, who probably has a better idea of exactly what Connie does.
Or is allowed to do.
Yes.
So I guess I am interested in seeing their education outreach plan. If they are proposing materials like brochures or other items that has educational material on it about the watershed and what people can do to, help improve water quality, do the things that the MS4 is trying to do with pollution prevention, alongside the Water Fund's mission, we can definitely help. We have cabinets full of materials, so anything that that we can pass out at events, things like that, we'd be happy to do that. So one thing I did want to comment on before is the focus, I guess, on the county portion of this, because the city of Bloomington has their own MS4, their own education and outreach staff related to stormwater. And I think dealing with CVU, they control the city's MS4. So I don't think it's appropriate to use the funding, say, for bill inserts, when to me that would fall under the city's MS4 jurisdiction, but instead focusing, like you all said, on the county and where our jurisdiction lies. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. Are there any further questions, discussion? All right, is there any public comment on this item?
Yes, I think I have some.
Yes.
I hate to say it, but I don't like you calling it Lake Monroe. It's not a natural lake, it's Monroe Reservoir. And I think we should stick to that type of terminology. But you're worried about sending out $1,000 for some educational thing. And yet the stormwater has a $35,000 education fund going to the Soil and Water Conservation District, which I think is excessive. And I am very concerned. $1,000 is minimal. We are living out in the county, and a lot of the county residents get water from Monroe Reservoir. And I think anything to help out, I would, for Monroe Reservoir, I would like it to be like the reservoirs in New York State, where they don't allow anything on the water because they want that as drinking water. And basically that's what we wanted also. And water in the future is going to be very, very critical throughout the entire world. It is a problem, and there's going to be wars in regard to obtaining water. But $1,000 for education for this particular thing, I think is absolutely minimal. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree with you about Monroe Reservoir. If it's called a reservoir, it does emphasize to people that it is our source of drinking water, I think, and that's something that people should have uppermost in their minds. And I'm sorry, Mr. Enright Randolph, you have.
Sorry, I just raised my hand real quick because I wanted to be the first to address that comment. I don't think it's necessarily the dollar amount, but the structure of the agreement in the MOU. So it's critical for us to take this time to look at these details so we actually move this forward in a very positive way. And so I just wanted to speak to that, Jim. I know that you pay attention to a lot, and it might look like a drip in a bucket occasionally, but I think it's crucial to take our time to make sure we structure something that can actually meet some of the intent that we're discussing here. And from somebody with a shoestring budget, $1,000 is not minimal to me ever. So.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? And I should say that if you have a comment to make, click on the raised hand icon on the bottom of your screen. And oops. I'm not seeing anything. So I'll bring this back to the board. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Martin.
Yes, I just want to say that Mr. Faber's comment is most apt, that this is a reservoir, not a lake. We've made that clear in our website on the history where our drinking water comes from, the history of our drinking water, and the date and importance of 1964, 65, when the reservoir was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. We have incorporated and received our 501c3 as Lake Monroe. And we did go back and forth on this at the board. And we decided to use something that was more in popular demand, a more popular and familiar word, Lake Monroe, as opposed to Monroe Reservoir. But I will bring this up with the board. I'm hesitant to go back through a name change given our shoestring budget, but I take your point, and we're meeting Friday with our marketing folks and website folks, and I will go through the website with them and make sure that and our materials reinforce the Monroe Reservoir point of view.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, Lee?
Yes.
If I could, thank you. Yeah, I think we have to be really careful with names because it's Monroe Lake officially. I mean, and it's great to call it a reservoir, but if that's not what it officially is by the Army Corps of Engineers, then that's not what it officially is. We would love to, you know, I get what you're saying about you don't do anything on the lake because it is the drinking water supply. That is, you know, we can't control that. Right? So let's control the controllables. And I get that it's important to emphasize that this is our drinking water source, that others have failed for other reasons locally, other drinking water sources. And that's important for people to understand. But I would just be cautious with names and making sure that they're legally accurate. So that's all I'm going to say. And I appreciate Mr. Faber a whole ton. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And certainly I've been around ever since the lake was built, and I've heard it called many, many, many different things over the years. So going with the official name might make sense. All right, is there any more comment, questions?
May I say one thing? I want to thank Miss Martin for putting her energy into this. This is amazing. You're a transplant to here, and thank you.
Yes,
You're welcome.
this is a wonderful effort. I hope it's very successful. If there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we sign a memorandum of understanding between the Monroe County Stormwater Management Board and the Lake Monroe Water Fund to award them $1,000.
I second.
All right, Ms. Sutonia, would you please call the roll?
Apologies. Jones,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes,
Thomas,
Yes.
and Wright Randolph.
Yes.
Right, motion passes unanimously. And thank you very much, Ms. Martin. We appreciate your being here and all you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye. And now we'll move on to new business, the stormwater expenditure report.
All right, everyone. So the February stormwater expenditure report, you see, tens are going to remain the same for labor and fringe. In the 20s, we have supplies totaling $1,040.30. 30s, for training and travel, we had Brandon Gilliland pass the CDL test, so we want to congratulate him. Public education and outreach, here's that $35,000 for the MOU with the Soil and Water Conservation District that was approved at the January Stormwater Board meeting. I do want to say that this $35,000 is used only for implementation projects within the county. It's a different purpose than the MOU we were discussing in this meeting earlier. So we receive a report from the Soil and Water Conservation District on the projects that they fund using this money. So this is different because they're actually getting practices on the ground to reduce pollution, reduce erosion, and in the process, helping folks manage stormwater on their properties. Next line, for fuel. And then we had some expenditures for Baby Creek. We're still in the design phase. And we made some success, some progress with the right-of-way purchases and easements. So for a total of $86,590.95.
Right, thank you. Are there any questions? Well, I actually was wondering what stage the county garage is at.
I haven't heard any updates on that, honestly. So I'm not sure if Connie has more information on that, but I can look into that for you.
Okay, thank you. It seemed like a relatively easy project, but it has taken a very long time.
Sure.
But I'm sure there's a reason for that.
So I went out there, I do quarterly inspections, and the project was complete at this point, but they needed to do some winter repairs. There were some gullies forming on the slopes, and the grass hasn't been established, but hopefully this spring will be a good time to get that started. So I will be conducting an inspection when I know the seed is down and the repairs have been made, and then we can file for a notice of termination with item.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. I thought it probably had been pretty much completed by now. Thank you. Any other questions about this? All right, then the next agenda item is the stormwater fee increase discussion.
I wanted to put this on the agenda to, I guess, recap what has happened since our last meeting and just leave it here for discussion if you have any questions on going forward or what this process is going to look like for the coming year. So,
Are there any questions from the board?
I guess I'm sure everyone's been following all the other meetings, but that it moved through the council and then through the commissioner's office and will be in effect, I guess, just for the benefit of the public. I don't really have anything to extend on that except for, I think we're all aware that we need to make sure we tread a little light in the first, or at least my observation is, until we are understanding exactly how we might be impacted by possible annexation. I know it's not the funnest discussion. We need to be careful we don't over obligate ourselves. And I think the only other thing from my position on the board is I would like to be somewhat looped into bond discussions as they start to proceed. So, we're all on the same page. And I might need some, extra hand holding, if you will, to walk me through some of the process. So I come to the meetings way more informed. But that's it. I just say we need to be somewhat cautious and aware. And that's all I want to do by bringing it up.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, I think adding on to what Surveyor and Wright Randolph said is that this issue came up in the council, and while it's a concern that we've discussed elsewhere, we would ensure that legal has a discussion with bond counsel about obligations. Some of this was couched in a fear of the rampant annexation by the city. But that doesn't go away. That threat does never leave. So I think it's just an important part of what we're going to have to do. And so it would be good to talk about priorities and to walk through what the intentions are. And if we could do that in the next month or so at this meeting, that would be great. I will also point out that one of the things that we have to be good at is at budget time, certainly not this year, but in future years at budget time, I think we need to be thoughtful and cautious and forward thinking about where the fee is at and if an increase is needed for, is this, and then look at, what is the long-term need and where are we at with our budget. I think that's why this came up when it did, honestly, because these projects that we're looking at are big and they're very expensive. And people are like, well, you should have asked before, but we really didn't have them to this point before. So, so we appreciate support of the council. And I think just those two, those two guideposts will help us along the way. So, yeah, thank you.
Any further questions?
I would like to also, as we move forward, talk about getting an additional crew on to address all the backlog that we have at this point. But I know we need to wait till some of that money starts to roll in.
so we do have a line item for part-time staff in the stormwater budget already. Lisa and I have been working on hiring some part-time positions instead of contracting out, say, flaggers and things like that. So we would be able to kind of transition that way. But Lisa and I are discussing how to handle that and how to get those additional work requests done.
Great.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, sorry, just to be clear, I also, one of the things I would like us to talk about is working and maybe bring planning into this meeting, but to talk about how we're going to structure that, because Ms. Latonia, Ms. Ridge, and planning staff and myself had a brief sort of informal discussion about how we do a stormwater inspection service and how planning gets involved with new permits and also our new commitments. So how are we going to balance that out? And if you all could work something out and bring it to us, maybe with planning, that would be great, and we can move forward on that.
And I just wanted to touch on that too. PAC unanimously moved forward the inspector, so hopefully we can get that in place as soon as possible. And also, yeah, we need to understand kind of the matrix as far as like where that overlap is with the inspector and planning, and maybe even other various departments that help, you know, preserve our environmental resources that stormwater deals with. With that said, I do think with our electronic permitting, it's definitely going to help kind of streamline that process. And we're going to kind of see where those hard stops are, where we need an inspector and, you know, we can't move forward until we get the okay. So I think all of what we've been doing over the last 2 years as the whole county is really going to be effective, and this position is really going to fit in nicely. So yeah, I'm really curious. So just let us know when you know.
Thank you. I have, well, a concern, I guess, that the council, there were a number of members of the council who were a little hesitant over raising tax or raising a fee right now, which to most citizens just feels like a tax. And it wasn't that they didn't believe that the need was there. They just weren't very comfortable doing it right now. A lot of what convinced them that this really was a good thing to go ahead with right now is the fact that bonds are so cheap right now. And Ms. Gibbons was commenting earlier today that her husband, who's an economist, is expecting those rates to go up real soon. So it seems to me that we need to have a discussion about a bond, what would go in it, how long it would be for, and all of those things sooner rather than later, so that hopefully we can, if we decide to go that route, we can take advantage of these lower rates. All right. Is there anything else? Doesn't look like it. Then Ms. Griffin, you have an annual report for us. You're muted.
Can I get the share screen, please?
One moment.
While she's bringing that up, I'll just introduce Connie, I guess, because I asked her to do this. So we have our annual report due to the state at the end of this month. And this is something that is going to have to go to a commissioners meeting for approval. So I wanted to take some time for Connie to present the report that she's been working very hard on. I think she's done a great job, so.
So this is for our permit term of 2019 to 2020. We're in year 2, and the next time we will be presenting another report will be in year 4, which is 2 years from now. Some of the basic information is our permit number, and the permit cycle is for 5 years. And so we have program management activities, and these were created in 2018 by the former MS4 assistant. And you might recognize some of the underlined items of identify the BMPs, because these are our 6 minimum control measures. So we'll be looking at the public programs that Dana had first implemented, but Kelsey and I have talked about possibly amending some of these in the near future. to meet the current focus of what we want to present. So some of the statements that are in the report, and I have done some revisions because Kelsey has finished her final review on the document. And so what I'll be reporting on is identifying the progress made towards these goals. And then, but there will be also some comments that are in the report about the problems that we've encountered to ineffectiveness or infeasibility, and COVID would be one of those problems. And then to describe the BMPs that went beyond those identified in the stormwater quality management plan, and to discuss what we have initiated for our minimum control measures during this reporting period and our partnerships. So we do have an agreement with Ivy Tech. We are working on a revision for that right now. And the annexations from the town of Ellisville, they were for 4 properties during the reporting period, and 134.67 acres were taken in by the town. And our funding source is our stormwater fee. And so for the time period of our report period, we'll be covering the over $3 million. And we have a Rule 6 location, which is the industrial site, and this is owned by Monroe County as well as private owners. Complaints that were reported in this particular report, we had 641 complaints received. We're able to resolve 518 of the complaints, so that was an 80% resolution. Now, a good question was brought to me by Kelsey today is, well, what about the other 20%? And I do know that the way that we take in these complaints, we issue them a status of low, medium, and high. And I'm gathering that we probably approach the more greater concern issues, but I will follow up on that particular item. So getting into the program management, I would like to go through the activities, and there were 7 activities in the minimum control measure of 1. So that's public education and outreach. So activity 1 was SWEET. That's a stormwater environmental education team. And when I came on in June of 2019, Dana was getting ready to transition. So Christy Lindberg with the city of Bloomington was asked to take over the SWEET meetings. And just last month, she did bring that up again, that maybe she would like to relinquish that role. So more than likely, I will be picking up the program management on that. So for activity 2, the annual stormwater calendar, that's been going on for quite a while. But during our reporting period, 3,500 calendars were shared with the public. They're distributed to the visitor center, master gardeners, while we do presentations, the 4-H fairgrounds, when we table it in the commercial room, commercial tent, the county departments, county justice building, and the contest winners, of course, and miscellaneous. So going above and beyond, I think that starting the calendar contest was different than having the staff simply putting it together. We used it also as a public outreach and participation event for children. And so then the database activity 3 of establishing area schools, I did do that in 2020. And I've used that database to send out the information for the contest, as well as sending stormwater information to the schools. Number 4 is tabling of events. And I have a discussion a little bit further down about that. But we managed to table during the reporting period 246. And that's not just us, that is who we partner with. And the Monroe County Solid Waste District, Ms. Corporal, she is excellent. And she is just such a go-getter and a dynamo that she really gets those virtual programs out and any other types of programs she is involved. So moving on to the postcards, no postcard was mailed during this time period, but we do have an idea for the 2021 postcard is that we would like to discuss the stormwater increase, to notify the public of why we are doing it, and what projects that this money will be used for, as well as staff and for equipment. Then we have the 2 rain garden workshops per year. So we were able to do those in 2019 and 2020. And then going above that, I went on to property owners, 2 different property owners, and I helped them kind of locate a spot, as well as to provide them information and presentation materials on installing a rain garden. And then the last one is our media outreach. So the media outreach ended in 2017 during the last reporting period. But in 2018, Stormwater Services, one of the interns went out and they did do something with the CATS TV for the Friday Fun Zone. And then we broadcast on CATS for our meetings. And then we also have 15 virtual, 15 virtual meetings for the Stormwater Management Board and the Drainage Board. And the Drainage Board wasn't on a virtual meetings or CATS. So I think adding them onto the Zoom platform might be kind of hard to get away from that, because I think it's actually very advantageous. And then 5 videos were posted to YouTube as well as Stormwater Services page. And then we've had, out of the 5 videos, we've had 101 views since February of this year. And in Facebook posts, it was 79 of those during the reporting period. So we participate with Monroe County Parks and Rec, City of Bloomington Utilities, Bloomington Parks and Rec, Purdue Extension Services, the Wonder Lab, Hilltop Gardens, and the IU and Monroe County Solid Waste District, and Soil and Water Conservation District too. So some of the programs that we participated in was Bug Fest, where we get about 150 kids to our table. Master Gardener presentations, we average about 50 if it's in person, about 12 when it's virtual. And then the 4-H fair, we probably have 200 people come and discuss things or grab a calendar at that event. And then Feed-In Farms, that's about 5,000 kids go through that event. And then Snell Day, that's about 150 kids visited the table. Moving on to activity MCM2, which is also outreach and participation. And this, so we had Hoosier River Watch training that is conducted by the Bloomington Parks and Rec and the County Parks and Rec. And there were four programs held during that time period. The HOA involvement, we share information on Facebook and have promotions of rain barrels and compost bins for sale. And then the water quality webpage, once again, we posted the 5 videos for homeowners concerning stormwater tips. We did administer a survey at our contractors workshop, but I think a good time to probably implement a survey would not be through the mail, but would be directly communicating with people as they come through the 4-H fair. And we could probably, hand them the calendar and a couple of those stormwater items, and maybe ask them 3 or 4 questions, as well as have a county map with a Post-it notes where they can write their concern and their contact information, and then we can follow up after the fair. So when we talk also about the shoreline cleanup on activity 4, we participated in 2018 and 2019. We helped them purchase to rent about 8 pontoon boats, and then we pay for the food for the participants. Now that's changed a little bit. Last year, Maggie Sullivan came on as a new coordinator, and she conducted 2 shoreline cleanups with Friends of Lake Monroe, and it was Adopt a Shore program through the Payne Town SRA. Excuse me. So we have also maintaining Adopt a Stream. That one event was scheduled by the Parks and Rec, and it had to be canceled due to rain. And then Storm Inlet Marking Program. We've marked 2 locations at this time, but we have 158 markers on hand. So we would like to start marking some subdivision or something. We'll decide that which would be the most beneficial. And then we would like to also add that to our cartograph asset management so that we can keep better track of them, as well as when it's time to go check on those. And so then we have the last one in Activity 7, which is the MOU with Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District. And that was just updated last year. So moving on to illicit discharge and detection. Well, actually, I would like to go back and talk about some of the implementation problems. So we have staff turnover and retirement. We lost Kathy Mayer from the Monroe County Parks and Recreation, and with that, with 30 years of a naturalist. And so no events were held in 2020, but they do have a new naturalist on staff now. So, and she's going to be getting programs going. We created an Excel workbook and put all of our information into an annual database, which I think will be terrific going forward, as well as putting any information as we come across it from something. We added in, so we might have some more historical data that we can add in. And working with neighborhood HOAs is a big challenge, because older subdivisions, they don't have established revenue streams or dues, and or the knowledge about stormwater infrastructure. So there's some challenges there, but I think that approaching it from an education point of view is probably our strongest way that we can go, because the county, we work in the right of way, county roads, county conveyances, but not on private infrastructure. So I believe that the 5 videos that are posted right now will help to some degree. But I think that it's going to be partnering with possibly the city of Bloomington, health department, many others to try to figure out how to best approach those people. Okay, so dry weather screening, activity number 1 and number 2 were done in 2017. So that was within the permit cycle period. So we don't have to worry about those until the next cycle. And we'll be using some of our original data to see where those points were. And then to distribute educational materials to fuel stations and restaurants. There was some information that was compiled in 2015 about the gas station locations, as well as in 2019, a brochure was created for the restaurant industry, but I did not see anything that was mailed out. But I do know what I did do. I mailed out 212 letters to active Rural 5 construction sites to discuss sediment and construction problems and common compliance issues. And then I sent out letters to concrete companies and limestone industry companies to discuss the illicit discharge. So although we didn't get information out in this cycle to the restaurants and the gas stations, we did get some out to other people about illicit discharge. So we will loop back around and start working on the other items. The Monroe County Health Department, there was one septic workshop in 2017. I have been in contact with Ryan Cushman Casper. He is taking over Randy's position And he is very interested in having a workshop 1 time a year to possibly 2 times a year on septic installation, and erosion control would be discussed for my part. And maintaining the cartograph GIS system mouth outfalls. We have 69 that have been mapped to date. And then Kelsey's working on getting me the ability to work in cartograph and Esri as well, so that I can participate in that mapping. And then we created a Rule 6 fueling, not the fueling area, but the industrial site. So we will work on the fueling reporting during the next reporting period. And then activity 7 is annually promote existence of the illicit discharge site. And we have that available to us on our website as well as SurveyMonkey, and it is posted on Facebook. So this gives you just a little a few, so you can see that up here on the top left-hand side is Facebook. We also like to promote for the homeowners about the compost bins and the rain barrels, and then our contractors workshop over here on the right-hand side, as well as the videos in the calendar contest. So moving on to MCM 4. So this is my strongest point is I'm really strong in construction site inspections, because I came from the zoning department or planning department as a zoning inspector. So so our frequency for conducting inspections, I didn't know what they were in 2018, but when I started in 2019 to 2020, I conducted 143 inspections, and I maintain the database with all the information that's relevant to that inspection, because we definitely want to track any improvement from the last time that we were there, or whether or not they're in compliance with their SWIP. So activity 2 is to develop and maintain internal SWIPs and review of county-owned projects. We ourselves cannot review county-owned projects. Those are turned over to Martha Miller with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and she feels more comfortable to turn them over to I. So that is perfectly fine, but we have to remain out of the process. But we do review the SWIPs to make suggestions, and to also sometimes calculate the amount of like erosion control blanket, and see if we can reduce some of that, or to help with the cost. And then we also just keep an eye on it, because it's a county project, and we would like to go above and beyond what's required. So then we have the pre-construction meetings with the county-owned projects. Yes, we definitely attend those construction meetings, but I think we've gone above and beyond that, in that we hold pre-construction meetings with all the Rule 5s that we issue for private properties. So I have a couple little, here it is. So during the pre-construction meetings, I hand out several different things. In one document on the far left, I do hold them accountable to that document. And some of the new requirements that we will be going through, those will all be in that document. And I go through several of the items, but I definitely hold them to this document, as well as give them erosion control requirements for individual lots when they're working within a larger common plan of development, such as a subdivision. And then I give them some inspection tips. Those are pretty much spelled out in the SWIP, but it just never hurts to try to keep reinforcing. They also receive a rain gauge and some education materials to post on their permit board. These are the county projects that we've had going on during our permit cycle. And that is our inspections. That 143 inspections were conducted. And out of those, 45 were found to be non-compliant. So that's 31%. So it is still a real challenge. But basically seeing an inspector out on the side probably around every 2 weeks is necessary to keep a project site in compliance. So going on to minimum control measure 5, I will have 5 and 6. So there's only 2 left. So the post-construction inspections. So in 2019, 1 was conducted, but in 2020, I conducted 10. And so I felt like that kind of made up for not knowing what was in 2018 and the beginning of 2019. And plus I was able to close out several projects that had open Rule 5s. They often forget that if you open up the permit, you do need to close it appropriately. And that's going through a final inspection, and that's one more chance to make sure that BMPs are functioning correctly, and that we repair erosion control. Okay, so yes, GIS map for private structural BMPs. I know that we have 18 so far, and we have been discussing that project with a current intern right now. And that would probably be going into the planning department records to try to obtain some of that information and old site plans and things. So on number 5, attend at least 2 conferences each permit cycle dealing with long-term quality. We have no problem meeting that. I would say, if I'm kind of lost my spot here, 10 in total. And then 1 HOA presentation on BMPs a year. 2020 wasn't a good year for trying to get together with people. So that's, once again, that's where those 5 videos came in. We were asked by the Stormwater Management Board to create more adult education. So that was the resolution that I could find at the quickest. And then the HOA database, we have 50 in the database so far. But there is a changing of the contact information that we will have to get updated. And then we're updating all of our ordinances basically that we handle. So that's in process. Moving, it's just a slow process. Those are going to be meet all the current standards as well. And then the research interests for new different green infrastructure and low impact development, we conducted an inspection or a survey at the contractors workshop, and we found out that green infrastructure was definitely a topic that they wanted more information on. So we plan on possibly making half the presentation the next time with our partners. And it was such a good program because we included the city of Bloomington. I think the town of Ellisville is also interested in joining in on the next time. And we had Kat Ziegler from Ecologic. She gave our one presentation, and she was just the best to go through that presentation with us. And Kelsey did soils, and she was amazing too. So she actually got asked to present, I think, at a NASA, that same presentation. So activity 6, or minimum control measure 6, activity 1, coordinate with field crews to develop roadside vegetation plans. Terry actually took me by several sites that he wanted to show off that the field crew had definitely improved on some of their techniques for stabilization. And then activity 2, we're updating the facility SWIFT. We just did some minor updating, but we have we have more to do. And we started the facility inspections. And so that's a good in for us to get that, to also work on that at the same time. So Cartograph asset management software to daily work. We have Laura Lane that works on that daily for us, but I know that Kelsey has been involved with learning some of that, and Laura has tried to train me on that. But we have a limitation of license, so I think we're going to make sure that I can also learn to use the program. So activity 4, update the drainage plan and additional BMPs at the highway maintenance facility. You were asking about that earlier. That is an excellent BMP, a system of trains, like BMP trains. I love that project because it has multiple water quality improvement. And I think that we're going to see a great benefit from that. And then investigate the cost to cover a dumpster for Karst Farm. Karst Farm currently has the dumpster emptied once a week, and during tournaments, they have it removed every 3 days. But we are talking about at least a tarp at minimum. I think a lot of garbage companies will be trying to figure out how to put covers on their dumpsters, with that being a new requirement with the construction general permit. And develop new employee training document for HR. I believe Dana was using a brochure. They could also go to YouTube and watch the stormwater overview. It's about 8 minutes long, and it talks about the county's stormwater. But I think more than likely, HR would just want to have this the brochure. And then the last one, activity 7, is to continue providing annual employee training. We have done some of the training here in the showers building, as well as the garage. And what I do with that is I track how well everyone performed on the pre-test and the post-test. And then I track that to see later on if we had some measurable improvements. So Stormwater Services has gone through a few changes, and we've had some staff turnover and retirements. And so we are going to be doing some updates on what I'm working on. Kelsey and I have some ideas, and so we'll be bringing those to you in the near future, as well as an updated annual report prior to, I think I will have that to you again on the 19th, and it would be also approved at the commissioners meeting on the 24th. So that is the report in a nutshell. But you're welcome to look at the report, and in the appendix, you will see the education programs broken down, and you can see what different people have done during that reporting period, as well as the mini grants going to 25 different recipients. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a few comments that might precipitate to a question.
Okay.
One, you're still hitting that high mark. At the SWEET meeting, I told everyone that Connie had present one of the best presentations I've ever seen from her time at planning as a zoning inspector, and inheriting all that information and organizing it and being able to report back very concisely. You're welcome to the whole thing again, but with stormwater, and I think it was excellent. And I just want to mention that I'm super happy to hear that we are continuing to utilize Cartograph. It's just like any technology. You have to use the fullest extent to get the fullest value out of it, and some of it takes extreme learning curves, but I'm super happy that you guys are continuing to adapt that, especially into your day-to-day practice. That's going to be the same thing that's going to generate those maps that we want to see where all of this infrastructure is. the fact that it's actually more of an asset management will give us cost projections and things. But I do want to echo that it is a ESRI integrated product. And we have a large ESRI contract here at the county too. So let's make sure that we see what's the most appropriate use with licenses. Is what you're striving for more of a cartograph or more of an internal ESRI product? So ArcMap, Arc Online, basically they have the same systems and they deliver the same information pretty much seamlessly, since they are enterprise, which it's interesting, kind of the relationships of a lot of these entities. So I want to echo that. I want to echo that I have 16 years of ESRI experience and skills. So as you're trying to move it from the system into usable format, reach out to me. I'll make myself available. And when we have the coordinator in place, we'll be doing more educational outreach too. So it'll show you kind of more of the ESRI system. And depending where you guys are, we could try to help with the cartograph too. So I just want to extend that service and make sure you know that will be available as you start moving that GIS component forward. That's kind of, and then my one question is this the same report that ties into becoming a CRS community where we have to kind of submit all of that within the same year that we're doing a annual report, or it's an annual audit? There's something there where there's a time frame as far as if we're being audited or doing a report where then we could submit some, if we choose to go that way, submit to become a CRS community, which is basically will reduce the flood insurance costs for anyone that has to have flood insurance in the county. And I saw you came off mute, Kelsey, if you do that.
I can answer this, or Connie. She's nodding. Okay. So yeah, this is just for our MS4 permit. We're required to do a report of all these activities each year and submit it to the state. And we get audited by item once each permit cycle for each MCM. So this has, it's just for the MS4 program, not for flood program.
And that might be with planning, but I'd like to know when that next audit comes around. So, because we're outside of that timeline now. So if we wanted to become a CRS community, right now, we're outside of that timeline. So it would be really interesting to know when that's going to be around the corner and what that timeline is for us to potentially become a CRS community.
So Larry Wilson is the floodplain administrator. So you are correct. It's in planning that has, so he would be the one to oversee that program.
And the only thing we've ever kind of not been able to get is someone to volunteer to become the MS or the CRS coordinator. I get that. It just, there's so much crossover between what we do here and what I guess planning does there. So it'd be really nice to have that information. So as long as this isn't part of it, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any further questions?
I had one. Connie, do you feel like you have the names of all the HOAs? Or if not, is there a way to get the Board of Realtors to help with that?
I could follow up on that. That list was prepared, I believe, by an intern. So I would need to kind of establish a meeting with someone like the Board of Realtors and then just follow up from there. So I will be doing that. We'll be making a list and checking it twice. So we'll be starting on several new things.
And I got to say, I was exhausted just listening to your report. So
sorry.
No. I mean that in a nice way.
Well, that's not half of what we do in here. So believe me, we're a busy bunch.
Yeah,
The two of us here.
you must be. To me, even creating the report seems kind of exhausting. Actually doing all the work is pretty impressive. But I'm glad that it's getting done well.
I have a fun question. Connie, are you still making them sign the post-construction contracts?
Yes, I do. It's a pre-construction checklist. I do make them sign that. So yes, I do. I don't know how much Dave would like that, but it's me letting them know that you signed it. And so it says, remember when you signed this? So yes, I do. I do that.
I think it's excellent. They can't come back to us and be like, I never knew. It's like,
Yes, yes. I put them on point.
Mhm. That's excellent. Bravo.
All right, are there any further questions or comments? Well, seeing none, I think this meeting can be adjourned. So we are done.
I had some comments.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
Oh,
I'm not totally accustomed to running a Zoom meeting yet. And
I wish to compliment Connie for her presentation. It was absolutely fantastic. It was great. That was tremendous. I have a stormwater problem that I brought up at the drainage board. It's a ditch coming down Arlington Road from Westbury Village down to North Maple Grove. And it swings around the corner, and there's always piles of leaves that are blocking the drainage there. And the neighbor apparently has to clean it out all the time. Yesterday he was out there and he had buckets full of leaves that he had to cart from that drainage ditch. Somehow something has to be done to that ditch going from Westbury Village down Arlington Road and then swinging around and going up north on North Maple Grove. It's a big problem there, and it puts out the leaves all on the road at various times of the year, as well as water and ices also. The other thing I wanted to bring up was that $35,000 grant to the Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District. This has come up year after year after year. And there were multiple grants given to same people over the years. I wish that the grants be given to new individuals and not to those that have received it in the past. This has been a problem. Tron, I know, investigated it too with me last year. So it's a problem that I really don't know how to solve. That $35,000 is a lot of money.
Jim, I don't want to interrupt you, but I could speak to that. We did put a limitation of people going through the program in hopes to open it to more ratepayers or more people that want to kind of go through the program. So there, we have kind of put a stipulation in our MOU. So far, I think it's 3 years that someone can go through the program before they can't. But I think what we want to do is incrementally put this in place to make sure that we don't deter anybody or like leave open spots, if you will. So, you know, I think it's a good first measure, and that we're supposed to get information back in the future. And so one thing we want to do is make sure there's more opportunity for people to go through this program, but at the same time, we want to make sure where it doesn't hinder anybody to go through the program if there's still availability there, if you get what I'm saying. If there's still opportunity and grant funding there, we don't want to deter people so they don't utilize it.
But I hate to see the same people using it over and over again.
Well, that's on the people that want to go through the program, Jim.
I could use it too.
But I just wanted to talk to that. You weren't here during that meeting, so hopefully you were somewhere taking vacation time.
Well, thank you.
thank you, Mr. Farber. Now, is there any further comment from anyone? All right, seeing none, we are now adjourned.